Welcome to episode 1 of the Closed Forum podcast. Today we're talking about Anxiety Arcade. My name is Matt Allen and I am talking with Adam Saskoronsky and Jack Sibley. This podcast was made possible with funding from Arts Council England. Anxiety Arcade will launch in 2021 as part of Compass Festival.
Hi, my name's Adam Skoronsky and I am the co-artist and programmer for Anxiety Arcade.
Hi, I'm Jack the Robot, and I composed the soundtrack for Anxiety Arcade. One, two, 1, 2.
Yellow.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can. How's it going?
Yeah, not bad. I'm just trying to figure out. This is something I always have a problem with. Is trying to figure out how to send Ableton audio into Zoom.
Into Zoom.
Which trust me, I spent like ages trying to figure this out.
Are you using a Mac or a PC?
Yeah, I am on a Mac. Yeah.
So I had to download to get different sounds. I had to download a thing called what was it? It was like a Soundflower.
Yeah, I've got Soundflower. I've done this before, and like it always seems like it works sometimes and doesn't work other times, and I can never quite figure it out.
Yeah, Mac can be I found so temperamental. Unless it's like a specific device that's meant to output for it, it can be quite.
So what I've had to do, this is how it's worked in the past, is you create an aggregate device. So that a Mac has this device listed, which is more than one output. So then its outputs are set to Soundflower and my headphones, so I can hear what's going on as well. And then in Ableton, you have to do some funny routing where it only does a stereo output, so you have to like send your master channel to Soundflower and have a return track which sends to my headphones. Then I have to remember to send everything. There we go. Can you hear me now?
You can hear you now. Yeah.
Yay!
Yeah, I can hear the piano as well. Yeah.
What is happening here?
I just thought I might wire it up that way just in case there's anything that I want to talk about, and I can just give a quick example.
Thanks,
How's
Jack.
it going, Matt?
Yeah, good.
I'm all right.
All right, you're all right.
Friggin' loving Subnautica.
Okay, I've never played it. I don't even know what it's like.
Oh my god! I mean, I don't think if you're feeling tired a lot of the time, it's probably not a great one because it's full of dread. Adam, have you played Subnautica?
Okay.
No, but I've heard some people say they hate it, some people say they absolutely love it.
I have a little bit of a fear of the sea.
Yeah.
Like I'll go swimming in the sea, I'll go on ferries, fine, but like deep water really fucks me up. And
Oh really?
and that game oh man, it's really awful because you're swimming around at the start and it's not too deep, it's all right, but then like there's suddenly a cliff edge and the water's really deep and it's like darker down there and it's horrible. It's really effective. Like the first couple of days of playing it really had me on the edge of my seat.
So what is the actual like gameplay? Is it a RPG or?
So it's like mostly it's like survival.
Yeah.
I guess is the way to describe it. But like there is a story to it, and you crash landed. But the character you're playing is very blank sheet.
Sure.
But like that your ship has crash landed on this planet, which is just an ocean planet. And you've got to sort of find out what happened to the survivors, what's going on this planet. And the story just reveals itself so well, I think. It's just because things take quite a long time to happen. You can spend quite a lot of time thinking, oh, okay, I'm just picking up this resource. And then you get a radio message that's like, come to this place. And it's like, and you go there and just crazy shit happens. It's really good.
Oh.
Man, I'd recommend it so highly. I think it's just finished being free, or maybe it's still free today. Should we do this podcast?
Yeah.
Let's do this podcast. Okay.
Do you have any idea for us? I mean, we've been recording this whole time. You're going to have to cut all this off. So I'm the latecomer to this process, really. So I don't know how it started. Where did the idea come from?
So we'd been working together on a bunch of projects over the last few years, and it started off from a performance background. We were making short performance pieces and things with interactive and digital elements to them. And then over the last few years, we'd made things that had more and more gaming mechanics in it, including like a citywide mobile exploration tour, which is where we first brought you into working with us, Jack.
Yeah, that's where I came in, but that was quite different to this project.
It was very
really good fun to work on. But I'm interested in where the idea of like making a game about anxiety came from, because I guess you'd done performance work about that before, hadn't you? I've seen some of that.
So I'd been having quite bad mental health issues for a few years and quite bad anxiety, and been making performance work about that, and slowly thinking about how the hell do I remove myself from the performance work so I don't have to be in it talking about anxiety and it being like really autobiographical, and also like making me think about my own anxiety more than I wanted to. But also the whole purpose of the work I was making to start off with was to get people talking more about their own mental health, not as experts, just like a peer-to-peer, and found that quite useful myself, and thought that that was like an interesting angle for the artworks we were making. So we saw this opportunity come up for a commission for Compass Festival, and we'd already presented a really early work in progress version of a previous project at their last festival that was like a version of this citywide tour. It was one of the first things me and Adam worked on together, called The Journey. And they'd supported that and given me space to talk to audiences about it and share it. So looked at the application and was trying to think what's the best fit. And as a natural progression from that, we applied with doing a game, but in our minds, it was still going to be very much like white text on a black screen, a text adventure kind of thing.
And yeah, I think it's important just to kind of state that the previous projects we worked on before this were really sort of almost like point and click adventures. There was no real input than you just pressing a button on a mobile screen and then being taken to a bit of text, and then you press another button. So whilst they were complicated, it was almost like pushing buttons on a questionnaire almost, and it was just kind of quite linear in the way it went. I mean, obviously it was branching stories, but it was very linear, and there wasn't that much interaction from the audience in that sense.
Yeah, it was using a piece of software called Twine that's used for interactive storytelling, where each passage or like is essentially like an individual web page, and then in like a choose your own adventure style book way, they link off to other pages. And we thought we'll do that, but like we'll make some charming, fun story about anxiety, and maybe make it like a 5-minute, 10-minute experience. And we wanted it to be in an arcade machine because we liked the idea of it like looking like really retro aesthetics, like an old Spectrum game or like a really old like text adventure game. And then we were talking more about it and just playing with different ideas, and we started testing things out on Unity. And then Adam was working on a Unity project for the end of his MA. Do you want to talk about that a little bit, Adam?
Yeah, so I spent sort of I was doing a performance MA, but due to the pandemic and everything was switched to working indoors, and so I was trying to find a way of creating a performance work, but that sort of wasn't just. I didn't want to just make a film. I wanted to make an interactive piece of artwork that sort of allowed me to still, have performative elements. So I started experimenting with Unity, having very, very little experience of coding, no experience of C#, which is the coding language used for Unity, or what we're doing in Unity, and I sort of had no idea about art, or sort of no sort of experience with art design or anything like that. So I gave myself a massive task of trying to make a full game sort of story, learning how to code, learning how to do basic sprite design, messing with music, all that sort of stuff, do all that within 3 months for my final master's piece. I guess
in 3 months.
In 3 months, yeah, it was a bit mad.
Yeah, because for me, like, as having worked with Closed Forum on a couple of projects now, the big switch obviously is when you switch from Twine to Unity. When did you start using Unity?
I first started Unity July last year, so it's not even.
Right, yeah.
So yeah, it's what, 9 months now.
That's ridiculous. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's and then Matt, you only really started in October.
January. Well,
January.
Yeah. So I'd worked in Unity on the same project as you from October when we started working on Anxiety Arcade, but it was I was doing a lot of the out of Unity work, like working on assets and coming up with ideas for the story and things like that. And then in January is kind of where I started going, okay, I no longer understand how this project works.
Right.
And I should probably understand how this project works. So I started trying to learn Unity myself in January.
What is it now? March? Or is it April?
It's April. Yeah, April the 2nd. Yeah. So
with a deadline to release a game.
I still don't understand. I understand how everything works now, but I couldn't replicate it myself. I can't write the scripts like Adam can. I can copy a script and change bits of it so it does what I want it to do with a lot of YouTube tutorials. And Adam's, I think, a little bit, would you say a lot more further along with that, where you can edit it? But if you're trying to add in new mechanics, you might need to watch some tutorials.
Yeah, or just for instance, I just made a new mechanic today. We won't talk exactly. It's sort of based on a popular gaming franchise. That was sort of a little snippet. We made a mini game, and I had to look up one bit of code this morning. But apart from that, I wrote everything and sort of designed everything myself today. And it took me a few hours of experimenting, trying to figure out how things worked and kind of why there were some bugs. But really, yeah, all written from scratch, and I can.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't say I'm fluent by any stretch of the imagination, but I feel like.
But I do remember when you spent 2 days trying to get a toilet lid to open and close. So
yeah, exactly.
It's quite a big step.
Yeah, definitely. It's amazing how far we've come in the past 9 months. To where we are today, and the fact that we actually do have a real working arcade machine with a proper 2D game, basically. Yeah, it's quite incredible.
Were any of the skills you learned in Twine useful for Unity as well, or is it just a totally different ball game? Totally different.
I guess.
Yeah, and they are in terms of the very, very, very top level of coding, understanding like if you do this sort of function, it then will link to that. So there's like, not to get technical, but a thing like if statement, so that if this happens, then this happens, is a very similar system to Unity. It's like if you go to this door and open it, this object will turn red. Like that's a very similar system to Twine, sorry. But apart from that and sort of other very, very core basic mechanics, it is a completely different system.
Yeah, it is quite different. We'd started getting to try to learn JavaScript to do all the back end of Twine, and none of that's really very useful for the project.
Really, yeah.
But like Adam says, the basics of how things work, like how certain statements will work, or how to like recognize why you might have errors in your code. Some of those things transfer along, like not opening and closing brackets in the right places and things like that. But mostly it was learning from scratch. And I think if Adam hadn't been doing the MA project last year, then we wouldn't have been anywhere near the position we needed to be in to start working on Anxiety Arcade the way we did and developing it in this way. It probably would have, it might have been built in Unity, but it would have looked more like a Twine game. we brought on like a whole team of people at the end of last year. We wrote the script originally, and then we hired a script editor to go over it and take like a look at everything and make it a little bit more cohesive.
Dialogue script you're talking about?
Yeah, dialogue scripts, right, okay, not coding scripts. We kept talking about how we need a coding expert to look over our scripts and work on that. But then we just didn't. We just kept cracking on with it.
As long as it works.
Yeah. Also, I think if we actually got a sort of professional to look at our script, he'd probably cry. Like, whilst it works, it doesn't mean it actually is any good or works how it probably should do. But we've sort of stuck it all together, and it's functioning really well, but probably by magic in some parts.
Yeah,
you're saving a programmer the trauma of having to pick through it.
Exactly.
We wrote down like a basis of how we wanted it to work originally, so we knew that it was going to be you were going to be in a house or a flat, and the end goal was just to get outside. So we just split it up into different rooms, and then we wanted each room to be a different mini game and have different mechanics. And I can't remember exactly what we originally wrote out for each room, but it looks quite different now.
It doesn't though, actually, because originally we were saying that we wanted each room to be its own little like game experience. So we wanted like one room to be like an old there's like old racing games where you used to move your character from side to side on like a moving track. Like you had like you'd be driving along and you'd have like cars or blockade barriers that you had to then try and move from left to right to try and get out of the way of. So like we wanted a room to have like a mechanic like that. So another room was going to be maybe like a text adventure. Another was going to be like moving items around. So the idea of mini games was kind of what the first iteration was. We then moved away from that, and then we put all the mini games back in again. So it kind of did go in a full circle in a weird way.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Each room was going to essentially be like a different game genre. And be its own mini game, rather than how it works now. It's like a top-down 2D exploration game that has mini games embedded in each room to explore and find in different puzzles.
Yeah, I think the exploration aspect was a real breakthrough. I remember playing an earlier demo where it was much more linear, and it wasn't so interactive in being able to go around and try out different things, and that makes a huge difference. Do you think people expect that from games a bit nowadays? To be able to like, just go and touch this closet, or
it's interesting because when we started working on this, we knew that a big audience for this might be a non-video gamey audience. Yeah. So we know that it's originally going to premiere at an arts festival, and we wanted to make it look like an old retro game to try to take away some of the fear of maybe interacting with like new technologies, or like something that might have like something really gamey that if you'd never played video games, you wouldn't be able to get into it, which is why we designed it all around it just being like one joystick and one button,
right,
just to interact with everything. And now it's 2 buttons, but that's only in certain mini games. And we know that like as we've got it tested by people who play video games, they really explore and push it to the boundaries of what you can do inside it. And we knew we'd have those two different audiences. Obviously, it's going to be in an arcade machine, so it's going to hopefully attract people passing by that like video games and look at it and just go, oh, a free video game, I'm going to go play that. And then other people that might approach it knowing that it's part of its arts festival and go to it maybe never have playing video games. But when we've done testing workshops, we have really found that people do expect it to have video game like secrets, and which is really good for us because the way we've made things in the past is we always wanted like even like performance work not to just be a straight linear experience. We did a lot of one-to-one work over the last few years where it's can be a slightly different experience for each person that comes and takes part as an audience member or a participant. And we feel that like video games as a medium inherently has that, where everyone's going to take away a slightly different experience, much more than you would if you was like watching a show or a film.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree.
So we started looking at it. Once we'd finished, you go from here in the bedroom and you do a puzzle, and then you go into the bathroom and do a puzzle, etc., until you like get out of the flat. And then we went back into each room and started thinking, well, what can we add in here in terms of like environmental storytelling and secrets, and maybe some extra puzzles and mini games that no one will find. And we did have a genuine worry that we were spending like an extra month making mini games that no one would find.
Yeah.
And then one of the first testing workshops we had, someone found like a room we'd left in that we thought we'd removed from the code. We thought we'd disabled entry to it because we're like, well, there's no point finishing this extra secret room because no one's ever going to find it. And then it wasn't finished, and someone in the feedback at the end of the workshop was like, well, I ended up in this weird room with this and this, and I was like, how?
I've got to say, I think it's so satisfying when I've not done loads of games testing, but when I tested Anxiety Arcade, I went out of bounds. I went into a mini game in it, and when I came out, I was outside of the room in just black space, and I was really pleased with finding that. Yeah, I broke the game a bit. I didn't know I did.
Yeah, it's so funny because like, you wouldn't celebrate breaking a performance.
No.
Well, you might. Like, I walked on stage and ruined everything. But there's something is quite satisfying about finding areas you're not supposed to.
Well, maybe it's like the streaker at the football match. You know? I introduced a bit of chaos.
It's kind of like a challenge. I hope people come and spend the time with it and explore its edges. And look at every little secret in it and see how far they can push the design mechanics of it. But also that it can just be played as a linear experience. So for example, like you leave the first room, the bedroom, and it says something along the lines of, well, I better go take a shower now. And you can just go straight and do that. And then it'll say, I need to check my emails. And you can just go straight and do that. And just go point to point if you're looking for more of a linear story and just like the core mechanics of it. And we've tried to make that like through line from like A to B, the start to the end, just like really interesting and have all the main dialogue in, and something that if you do just want to just follow the instructions and just play from start to finish, that hopefully you'll still have just as good an experience as someone who spends all the time exploring everything, but it'll just be a vastly different experience.
Yeah. Well, I really like as well, because it's a relatively recent introduction, the score screen at the end. Because I know that I would play through it and I do the things that you're supposed to do, and then I get to the end and see that score screen and think, oh, there's a couple of things here I haven't got. Like I totally go back and do that. It's good, sort of pushing the player to replay. I think that's really good.
Yeah, that was an idea from we were having mentorship from a company called Blast Theory. The mentor from that, Nick, was saying that people need to know what they miss out on. If there's things that you can explore, and encourage just to add that system in, so that you can see at the end that you've got 400 points out of 1,500, so you've missed loads, but you've done everything, or so you thought.
Yeah.
And I think, but that's a really key point to this process as well. We've had quite a lot of really helpful outside eyes in helping us throughout this, because I think, Matt, both you and I have sort of had points throughout this project where we didn't know whether we were making something incredible or something absolutely awful and terrible, and having outside eyes continuously look at the work and kind of be able to go, this is great, or does this really work, or like really sort of just like truthfully telling us what they think of it has been really, really helpful. We're kind of blinded because we're just stuck and engrossed in it that we can't really tell what's going on with it sometimes. So having these people like Nick, like you, Jack, like Ellie Harrison, who was also worked with us, just be able to kind of tell us, oh, I don't know, I think you should try something different here, has been invaluable.
The only other platform we've developed it for is we made a website version, so it just runs in HTML5 and can just be embedded on a website. And we thought that was a really great way to distribute it. So anyone that just has a Chrome browser can just open it up and play it. But it ran really differently. Like the text ran incredibly slow and your character is incredibly fast. Right. So fast that he could run through walls in some points.
Too fast for molecules.
Yeah. So there's like barriers around each room called collider boxes, and they are supposed to detect the player, and so that he can't pass through it. And he was traveling so fast that in certain scenes you would just run straight through a wall, but then after you weren't going fast once you were outside of a wall, so you couldn't get back in.
Right.
And we had a lot of that, so we've decided at this stage we're just going to stick with the arcade machine and we're also making like a one level version of it that we'll distribute probably via a website, but we can test it out a lot more and hone it down because it's just going to be like a smaller, shorter experience for people to get a feel of what it is.
Yeah.
Especially like now with, obviously, there's a big global pandemic. Just to say it is.
In case you hadn't noticed.
Yeah. And we can't necessarily assume that people are going to be going out to a shopping arcade in a few months' time when this launches. And we don't want people to have to necessarily travel just to see this artwork. We're wanting to make it an experience for people who are already there. So to make sure that it reaches a larger audience, we're thinking about how we can distribute it in the future. So we are looking at things like Steam and Xbox and things like that. But obviously, it's first and foremost, it's a short, repeatable artwork. It's not a video game because video games are not 20 minutes necessarily.
No, not true. Not true. I disagree. How is it not a video game?
I mean, it is a video game, but it's a very short video game.
Yeah.
Video games is really expensive. So, like, if and when we do want to start another project, we have to either figure out can we get funding, or is it going to be something that's a labor of love, but then we have to take a lot longer to make? That maybe sort of make a project over 6 months. We maybe then just have to do it in our evenings over a year and a half, maybe, to be able to get that next thing out, because it's super time consuming and to sort of build something like this.
Yeah. It takes 2 days to get a toilet seat to go up and down.
Exactly.